Hey, I'm Dave Coach. Welcome back to my channel. I hope you're having a great day. I am having a wonderful day. Today, I'm going to talk about a couple of common mistakes people make in real estate photography and the most important part, how to fix them. To me, that's the most important part. I think, it's important to get critiques, but a critique without a solution is pretty much worthless. I think, especially if somebody knows how to fix something, if they just say, oh, your picture isn't very exciting, and they don't go on to say, here's how to make it more exciting, that's probably not the best advice you can get. It doesn't help a whole lot, does it? Anyway, in this, we'll not only tell you the mistakes that you might be making, but we'll talk about how to solve them. So let's start with number one, and that's lens related, and it's shooting too wide. And this is a common mistake, and I think we all do it, and you hear it a lot. And don't shoot too wide. I shoot a 14-30. And that's the lens that's on my camera. Most of the time, I'm shooting real estate stills. I will change this out for, commercial or something like that. But for real estate, 14-30 is going to get you just about everything that you need. What I think you'll tend to find when you're starting out is you're always all the way down at 14 when you're shooting. And maybe that's because you're not used to being able to shoot that wide and you're amazed that you can get that much into a shot. Maybe it's because your realtor says, show me how big this room is. And you just get used to shooting 14 or 10 in a crop sensor, for what that's worth. That works in very few occasions, in my opinion. When you're at the 16-14 end of a zoom lens like this, you're introducing so much distortion. And I don't mean that the walls are curving in, although you do get a lot of that too. You get either barrel or whatever the opposite of barrel is. But the other problem is something this close to the lens is so much bigger than something way over there. And so it distorts the reality of the image. And, I remember, for a long time, I thought that was a really cool look, But as you spend a little bit more time and get a little bit more experience in real estate photography and photography in general, you'll find that those really cool distortions, unless they're done for effect and for a specific image, really show your lack of experience. And I don't mean this to be critical of you if that's what you're doing. And again, there are times in just about every shoot where I will shoot at 14 because it's what's needed. But in general, I think you'll find that, like in a room like this, this is my kitchen right here. If I shot from right here at 14, I could get a similar image if I back up a little bit and I go down to 20. But what happens is now the lens is closer to the way our eye sees and it looks more natural. And because of that, it's more accepting when a viewer looks at it and they go, oh, that's something that I would see. Whereas this wide, super wide kind of look is kind of scary. It's on the verge of a horror film kind of look. If you're showing 3 walls in a room, you're generally too wide because people don't see 3 walls when they're in a room. I think the best thing we can do as photographers is try and show the room as close to what it looks like to a normal person as possible. And that means zooming in a little bit, backing up if you have to, and shooting, more in the 20 to 24 range. I think the human eye actually sees more closely related to a 50, but that's not going to cut it either. I also think part of your job as a photographer, when the realtor says, shoot it as wide as possible, I want to show so much space, you need to say, there's a reason we don't, and here's why. Our job is to be the photography professional, not to be the realtor's lackey. And you need to be able to say to them, we don't do that for a reason, and here's why. Or you know what? Maybe you say, let me shoot it your way and let me shoot it my way, and let's compare. It's not going to be easy to jump into that shooting narrower and tighter, especially if you've been shooting at 14 for a long time. You're going to have to ease into it, and you're going to have to feel comfortable doing it, and you're going to have to keep easing into it more and more. And I honestly think the thing that helps the most when you do that is to back up when you do it. I often say back up, zoom in, and the two go together. A lot of times I've found that I'll go into the next room and shoot into this room, and I'll get the shot that I want. When you're doing that, like with this table and there's an island right there, you're going to need to raise up a little bit too to layer these things so that you can see into that room. So you may be shooting a little higher than normal, but that's a really important thing to do to show that room and how that room really honestly looks. I have found in photography, there's a lot of contradictions, and a lot of times I will in my own brain think about something I'm trying to do and I'm not doing it. I'm trying to shoot a close-up with a 14 millimeter, and I'm trying to shoot a close-up of something right there, and it's not working. And then I remember photography is about contradictions, and the best way I found to get a close-up of that is not get right here with a 14, but to get back over here with a 200 and then zoom in on it and then crop in on it. There's other things too. Who would think that a 200 telephoto would be the best way to shoot a close-up? You'll find a lot of times that is the answer. And there are so many other things in photography that are contradictory but work. And one of those that directly affects real estate photography to me is the idea that I think a room looks wider when you shoot it tighter. Again, doesn't make sense, but it works. Let's go back to that 3-wall thing that we were talking about. If you show 3 walls, not only are you distorting that room, you've made the walls not parallel because you're showing 3 walls, but it limits the size of that room because you can see how big the room is. If we simply cut off that 3rd wall and we're showing 2 walls, I don't know where that 3rd wall is. This room could be bigger than I'm thinking, and it's because you're zooming in. The other thing you get when you zoom in is you compress and you tighten up the objects in a frame, which fills up the frame. When you're shooting wider, empty spaces look empty. When you zoom in, they tend to tighten up. And because of that, the room seems to be bigger. So take that for what it's worth. I find zooming in makes me feel that the room is bigger. Mistake number 2, and that is relying on bad lighting. If your business model is to shoot 5 homes a day and you need to spend 20 minutes in a home, you're going to take what you get, and that's it. But I think when you've got a little bit more time and you can spend a little bit more time doing things, paying attention to lighting is really, really important. In this room, we've got a lot of cans in the ceiling. That's fairly typical for most kitchens, a lot of living rooms, a lot of other rooms. But it's ghastly light. Light coming in this way is really, really ugly. It's almost horror lighting. Horror lighting is really this lighting. But when you've got, that's the complement of this lighting. So it's not really the best lighting that you can do. When you light from the sides, you get a nice gentle, this lighting. There's a light right here that's lighting me. And I think, this is a fairly natural, good, hopefully good looking light. And so what I'm saying is pay attention to the lighting and get more cross lighting and lighting that comes either across, like here, you can see these windows. All the light in the background is all coming across this way. And hopefully that looks pretty good. We've got definition, we've got shadow, we see things that way. Whereas when you've got the light that's coming down, our shadows are disappearing into the ground and things just look ghastly. So when you can and when you are lighting, light across and light softly, and you'll get a lot better look, a lot more appealing look than you will when you flip on lights and you light from straight down. Don't rely on existing lighting. When you can, try and bring in your own lighting and light something to the way you want it to look, not to the way these cans light it. The other thing is, and this is, my own thing, these lights tend to be 3200. Window light tends to be 6500. Here, let me just turn those on. Okay, what happened to the color? Probably, I can't see, but I don't think this is nearly as appealing as that. And I'm in a place in my career and in my development where my goal is to make something look as natural and normal as possible. And I do that with artificial light. I manipulate natural to look natural when it isn't. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think, shadows are a natural part of what we see. And I'm not happy with images that don't have shadows, that are flat. And again, that's where I'm at. Your mileage may vary. The third mistake I wanted to bring up is rushing through post-processing. Post-processing is kind of where I like to have my fun with images. I know when I'm shooting how I expect that image to end up and what I expect out of it. And post-processing is where I bring that out, because generally your raw images are not going to be perfect. I'm not Wayne Capelli. I can't do that, not like him. But I get as close as I can. But I know that, like, for instance, no matter what I do, the windows are going to be blown out. So I will layer in something that's a little faster exposure so that I can see out the windows, or whatever I need to do to get that image to where I want it. But too often, close is good enough in editing, and you rush out or you put out images that maybe aren't quite finished. And I think that's a mistake, because your name goes on everything you put out, whether you know it or not. And even though I, as a professional, may look at that and say, oh, your window pull could have been a lot better, and a realtor may not be able to express it in those same terms. If you're not doing really good window pulls, the realtor is still going to know there's something wrong, something weird, something unusual, something bad about that image. They may not be able to say window pull, but they'll know. To me, it's super important that all the images in a sequence match, that the colors match, that the contrast match, that they look like they're all of the same house, all taken at the same time and all done in the same manner. Because again, like I said earlier, I want the images to look natural. I want it to look like you've walked through that house. And you don't walk through a house And some rooms are darker or lighter. Your mind, your eyes, they're incredible. They'll adjust that exposure so that everything is even as you walk through the house. You know, ultra dark rooms may stand out or something like that, but by and large, every room in the house has the same exposure to your eye. And that's what we need to do as photographers. We need to match the feel through the whole house so that it's all one cohesive thing. So when I say you don't spend enough time in editing, I just mean don't rush through it. Take the time. If something, there's probably no better words of advice than this. If something bugs you, don't just say okay and let it go. Fix it. Figure out what it is that's bugging you and make it work. Because if it bugs you, it'll bug somebody else. And they may not be able to put the words on it, but they'll know. And, you know, if you're feeling like you didn't put your all into it, take a break, go have a coffee, a beer, whatever it is that you do, and come back and look at it again. Or go to the bedrooms and then come back and attack that living room again, or whatever the problem area is. But do whatever you have to do to make your work as good as you can. And yeah, that's my advice for you for today. I hope that helps. And I do mean this sincerely. I hope your next shoot is your best shoot. And if you work hard at it, it will be.